Okay, we're back. Week number two, as we are going to look at Joe Biden's presidency, documenting 46. I know the podcast series name is Documenting 47, but we have about 59 days to go before President Trump is sworn in. And I think it's important that we look at how or why the American public voted for Trump for a second term. So let's look at Joe Biden. Let's examine his record. Okay. So the recording of this is Sunday, November the 24th, 2024. And let's look at it. I'm going to use Politico today, and I'm going to look at the Times of India as my resources. So Joe Biden, as the right wing calls him, Sleepy Joe. Okay. I always found it fascinating that Sleepy Joe was his nickname, yet he was able to manipulate gas prices throughout his presidency. Whenever gas prices would go up, they thought he had something to do with it. Anybody with an ounce of intelligence knows, that the market dictates gas prices, milk prices, but the problem is a lot of the electorate doesn't doesn't understand or might not fully understand macro or microeconomics. So the president gets the blame, and the president, Joe Biden, did a very poor job in defending, what was going on. Let's face it, he's not really proactive. A lot of Democrats aren't proactive when it comes to selling their ideas or selling their successes in with legislative success stories that they've had, laws passed. Obama wasn't really much better. Okay, Trump on the other hand, he could sell a load of crap to a lot of people, and people will eat it up. Okay, the one thing Trump is good at is he's a good salesman. All right. So Joe Biden, one of his failures that I'm going to look at here is was his inability to sell what were his successes. Listen, every president is going to have good and bad. Okay, and this whole series is going to look at the next 4 years is going to look at Donald Trump's good and bad. There'll be some good things he does. There'll be some bad things he does. Okay, so Joe Biden. Let's look back here. So where did Joe Biden was a senator for many years from Delaware, ran for president in 1988, lost the nomination. Um, should have probably run in 2016, but he decided not to because his son Bo had passed away. All right. And normally that's kind of what happens. The transition goes from, he was the vice president, and then he, normally you run and become, carry on the legacy of Obama. I know Obama's all worried about his legacy now that Trump has won a second term. It does kind of question, the previous 8 years prior to Trump coming in, which was Obama. So, it is an interesting look at things like that. But let's look at Joe Biden and what he actually accomplished and didn't accomplish. So let's go back here. He comes in during COVID. Now Donald Trump, and I've made this argument with some friends in discussions. If COVID never happened, Donald Trump could have easily won re-election in 2020. The economy wasn't horrible. He had been president for 4 years, and then COVID happened, and things went off the rails pretty fastly. Okay, and it was because of COVID and Donald Trump's inability to handle COVID or to understand it, or I think he understood it. I just think he chose not to do certain things that led him to lose the election in 2020. Okay. So then Biden comes in. Biden's older than Trump, obviously. And the age thing has something to do with this here too. People age differently. Joe Biden, looks every bit of his age, which is now 82. Donald Trump throws on the spray tan or whatever tan he's using, dyes his hair, looks 20 years younger. Okay. And that's a part of this. And he even though he mutters out a lot of stuff that is gibberish, and I'll get into that in another podcast. There's a technique called Gishgob, I believe it's called, where you actually just throw out a bunch of crap, and the people who you're speaking to, they can only respond to, like, you know one of your inner one of the things that the person says wrong. That's a technique. You throw out 50 different things, or 20 in like the span of a minute. You can only respond to the one or two that you remember. So Trump appears more energetic when he does that. Okay, when he answers questions and he doesn't really answer questions, that's energy. I don't know if it's energy or not, but he appears more energetic. Okay, I think so anyway. So, and people want a younger looking president. Joe Biden was too old. Right? Joe Biden probably, listen, Joe Biden should have gotten out of that race long before that debate back in June. The people around him probably, saw him declining, and he did decline. Go back and look at the tapes from 2020. He declined for sure. But people age differently. Will Donald Trump in 4 years from now, look like Joe Biden? Who knows? We'll see. But anyway, getting back to Joe Biden here. What did he do when he was president? What didn't he do when he was president? Let's take a look here. So, and I'm reading from the Times of India here. The American Rescue Act, 2021, $1.9 trillion stimulus package was aimed at providing economic relief to those affected by the COVID-19 pandemic. People got to remember, couldn't get toilet paper back in 2020, 2021. Lysol, you couldn't get Lysol. People were out of work. Restaurants were closed. Remember the whole outdoor dining thing? Schools were open, but it was virtual. So a lot of these people that bitch and moan about Trump and, we need to get him back in there, they all benefited from that stimulus package, the rescue plan. Absolutely. Next, Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act 2021. Okay, a lot of people talk about infrastructure. Trump for years talked about it, but he never did anything about it. Listen, the roads, the rails, the airports, the ports, you got to upgrade them. This passed. Okay, you're building a new train tunnel to New York now. All right, huge infrastructure project, lots of jobs, construction. Joe Biden didn't not once did he go to the project and do like a campaign stop there or whatever. Hey, look what this bill did. Not once. All right, but they passed it. Okay, train line to Scranton, Pennsylvania, and there's other projects all over the country. I'm just aware of the ones, because I live in the North Jersey area, but there were other ones around the country. And he never really, this is progress. This is something he could sell, and, never really campaigned on it. So, the vaccination campaign, the Chips and Science Act, how about that? 2022. Okay. This is huge. Upstate New York, right outside of Syracuse. They're going to be building manufacturing plants here for, for semiconductors and chips. Okay. Computer chips, United States. So listen, that's a huge one. That was bipartisan, by the way. The Inflation Reduction Act of 2022. All right. The expansion of the child tax credit, strengthening our international alliances, right? Healthcare improvements, climate initiatives. I mean, all of this stuff. Okay, but Joe Biden couldn't sell it. Couldn't sell it in the debate against Trump. Right. Not to mention student loan forgiveness. Student loan forgiveness. Many people have thousands, tens of thousands of dollars of student loans, hundreds of thousands even, and they did expedite that process for many people. Right? He couldn't even sell that. Okay. So these are all things that Joe Biden did in the last 4 years. Not to mention, he appointed a African American woman to the Supreme Court. Okay. We have the day off in June now for the emancipation, the freedom of the last slaves in Texas, new federal holiday. All right. But Joe Biden gets a lot of blame too. All right. And here's the thing. I'm a Mets fan. I'm a Giants fan. All right. And when things go bad, as a fan of the Giants, as a fan of the Mets, I'll be the first one to criticize. Now, let's face it. I wasn't the biggest fan of Joe Biden, going back. Too old. He was too old in 2020. Was nobody's first choice to be president. Middle of the road Democrat. And so these things that went south on him, a lot of people can say, well, that's why he shouldn't have been president. This Afghanistan withdrawal. Listen, it's optics. It's optics. Looks bad. When we left Afghanistan, that is and the servicemen that died, horrible. Should have planned that a little bit better. And he should get the blame for that. And he does. Okay. Also the inflation issue, okay, and economic issues. I for whatever reason, I don't know why they were aware of it, and I would see this social media, TikTok, whatever. People would complain about the price of gas every time it went up like a cent or 2 cents. There's signs in upstate New York, west of Albany, on the thruway, where there's like a sign with Biden pointing towards the price of gas. Look, I did that. Didn't really address the gas issue, the inflation issue. Now, listen, has it come down a little bit since the peak of this a couple of years ago? Yes, but people are still hurting. I think a lot of the people that voted for Trump voted on that issue. That's my analysis. That's my opinion. And the next issue, which I'm going to bring up, immigration. Another tough one here. Biden dropped the ball on immigration. All right. Didn't take it too seriously. And then you have states like Texas busing the immigrants to states like New York, New Jersey, liberal states that are all in favor of immigrants and immigration until they come to your state. Okay. And there was no real way to address this issue. So I think Donald Trump will, as far as I can tell, he is going to, change that policy on immigration and border security. And I believe he's going to also going back to inflation and economic. He's going to try to address it. And if not, guess what? Within 6 months, he'll have problems too with his polling. Yeah, absolutely. All right. So listen, and there was also the crime and the public safety and the war in Ukraine. Listen, folks, the war is dragging on. A lot of money being spent over there. Donald Trump's going to end that. Listen, if you're if you're a pacifist, listen, Vladimir Putin, not the nicest guy, dictator, thug. I don't know how I would deal with him if I was president, but you can't have a war that goes on indefinitely and write blank checks year after year when you have deficit problems here. It's an issue. The war in Gaza, another one. I like the people who voted for Trump thinking he's gonna help out the Palestinian cause. Yeah, how's that gonna work out? Okay, so listen, the world is more of a mess. The world, foreign policy, absolute disaster in 4 years. All right, you have these wars going on. You have China flexing its muscles. So it's really, it's a dangerous world. And what's going to happen here is my prediction. Trump is going to pacify these people in Russia. Putin is going to try to end the war there. He may or may not be successful. It's going to raise tariffs on China. China's going to go into Taiwan. We're not going to do anything. The Israeli-Palestinian conflict, I'm not sure how that's going to end, but sure it'll end pretty soon anyway. That's been going on. A lot of innocent lives lost. But listen, this is the world where we live in. And Joe Biden, if people ask you, is the world better today than it was 4 years ago? The world? Maybe it's not. COVID killed a lot of people, but these wars are killing a lot of people. Is the country better off today than it was 4 years ago? I would say our country right now, I can get toilet paper. I myself am better off, personally. Okay? And the whole point of that, the whole point of this podcast is to document it going forward. Will we be better off than we are today in 4 years and 59 days? We'll see. As a history person, we look at the laws passed under a president. We look at how the president handles different crises, and we're going to see what happens going forward here. But Joe Biden, if you think Joe Biden was the end all, no, he wasn't. He wasn't. And Harris, by the way, didn't distance herself enough from Joe Biden. She didn't have enough time to really define her own principles and her own agenda, which is why she lost. All right. So Joe Biden, by the way, Joe Biden held on way too long. Should have gotten out a long time early before the debate. Should have gotten out then. And then he had that disastrous debate, and then people pushed him off. Okay. But no, he should have been out a long time ago. All right. I always thought he was going to be a one-term president, but anyway, we'll let future historians decide his legacy. But he's going to be remembered. People will be talking about Afghanistan and that withdrawal for years, the inflation, but he should also be remembered for the CHIPS Act, which was bipartisan, the Build Back Better. So listen, there's pros and cons with every president. He's leaving the world a little bit more dangerous. The Russia-Ukraine war, scary. But we're going to continue to document what happens here. So for all intents and purposes, Joe Biden's presidency is over, and we'll let the people decide. You can comment below. Is Joe Biden going to be remembered for inflation or for, Build Back Better? We'll see. We'll see what happens. Okay. So we are going to have a special guest on our next broadcast, which will be dropping a week from tonight. And I'll announce it during the week on the Documenting 47 Facebook page. And hopefully everyone stays safe, has a good Thanksgiving. And we'll see everyone next week with a new podcast with a special guest. And we're going to talk Trump. And we're going to start to document why people voted for Trump, the reason they voted for Trump, and where they want the country to be in 4 years. So until then, have a great Thanksgiving, everyone. Stay safe. And we'll catch you next time on Documenting 47.